Well, I really became aware of the issue of men not being seen as victims probably about 22 years ago. I owned a recovery bookstore in Toronto called That Other Bookstore. And I did the first national conference, as was stated, for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And at the time, I was asked to do it with a group of women. And when they found out that I also wanted men to come to the conference, they pulled out. Because I said, I'm not doing it unless men are involved, because as has been spoken, and we all know, men are not just perpetrators, they can be, but they're also victims. And so I did that conference 3 years in a row. And that first year I had about 300 people come from right across Canada, but there was only a handful of men, just a really couple men. And the next year, a few more, and the third year, a few more. Well, many of you maybe are too young to remember, but about 14 years ago, Martin Cruz was the first man to come forward at Maple Leaf Gardens to say he'd been sexually abused by Gordon Stuckless. And as a result, Martin Cruz came forward. Martin had come forward. And Gordon Stuckless got 2 years less a day for abusing. Well, I've had over 100 men approach me so far that were victims of either Stuckless or Roby. So Martin felt, is this all my life is worth? And of course, he was very troubled by and in trauma, took his own life. He jumped from the Bloor Viaduct. And so Stuckless went back to court. He got federal time, but then he got out in 2/3. And of course, you're hearing about Stuckless all the time, still in the news, new victims all the time. But what that did was, because Martin came forward and Sheldon Kennedy has come forward, and more recently Theo Fleury, men are more comfortable now to come forward. And that's the good news. The bad news is there's very little for them to come forward to. We're a referral resource center, and I would say the majority of calls that I get are from men. And we have done 26 conferences on male victimization. And again, the good news is, at each conference we've done, for instance, the one here in Toronto, we've done them with the OPP and Lynn McDonnell, the therapist we work with. And the one in Toronto, I think we had 400 people come. Now, it wasn't all victims. It was first line people, the police, the therapists, the families. That's great, but again, there's so little for men available. And then last year, I heard about Center for Men and Families. Did I say it right?
The Center for Men and Families.
Yes, okay. And I heard about Justin, what he was doing, and I phoned him. I said, I think this is amazing. Not just that it's for men, but it's for families. Because, you know, it's like anyone. When there's someone in the family that is struggling, the whole family is struggling. So I really liked it, and I said, you know, people have to find out about you. This is amazing. So we did a conference last fall, which was wonderful. So I'm really happy that more and more men are coming forward. But again, when they call me, most of them don't have money. A lot of them maybe are dealing with addictions. Do you know over 95% of the men in prison have been sexually abused? Over 85% of the women in prison have been sexually abused. So I think I'm really frustrated when I do get the calls. And more recently, I'm hearing more and more about domestic abuse. And actually, a lot of it, I'm learning more and more from the center. But I did have a man come to my office about a year ago, and he was crying because his wife was hitting him, spitting on him, kicking him in front of the children. But what's he going to do? If he leaves, he can't leave with the children. There's nowhere he can go. And if he leaves by himself, the children and the dog are going to get it. So he's trapped. And there's so many men in that situation. And I was appointed to the advisory committee for judicial appointments by the Attorney General a couple of years ago. And I found out how judges are picked. And it's definitely political. But also, there's a quota now for women judges. that they want women judges, minorities. I mean, there's a quota. That may help. I'm hoping that with more women judges appointed, there might be more sensitivity than the men judges. Unfortunately, you can't teach judges anything. If you invited them to a course, they wouldn't come. So we've tried. I've worked a lot with the government, the federal government specifically, on changing the laws to protect children. We were very instrumental. It was our legislation that brought the age of consent from 14 to 16. But that took 3 years. So this is going to take a while. It's changing a whole culture. But I think it's wonderful that women are now getting behind this. There's still there's an element of women that are extreme, that don't want to, that we are called extremists ourselves. But I think more and more people are understanding this. But I just want to congratulate you, Justin, for your center. And I'm very, very proud to be a part of it and support you. The other thing I just want to mention, too, is we support over 100 agencies a year. I would say about 85% of them are shelters, women coming out of shelters, and we can provide them with everything from bedding, brand new bedding, to housewares. We can really get them set up. But we are able to do that for men as well. That I want to put it out there. I don't know who here are frontline workers, but if you have some man that is starting over again, we will help him with everything, from furniture, we can help clothing. We just gave a whole bunch of clothing to Justin. So I just want to put that out there. And then one other thing I want to mention is that really helped is 11 years ago, John Derringer from Q107 came on board. And he does the 13 Days of Christmas for us, for 13 days. He's a huge supporter of men. And he is always, when I have anything about men, like I'll tell him about tonight, he'll talk about it on air. So I think you can get a few media people really, speaking about it. Someone that he's a man's man. He's a real jock. And actually the reason he even got involved was he got charged. He and the station were sued because he named a judge, a tool of the day, which he has every day, a tool of the day, for giving a pedophile a conditional sentence, which means house arrest. And he named the judge, and of course you can't name a judge on air, and he got sued. But he is very, very passionate about this issue. So if you don't listen to Q107, it's just a little plug there to John Derringer in the morning.